When my mother passed away, my world turned silent. The house that once echoed with her laughter now felt like an empty shell. Every corner reminded me of her. The faint scent of her perfume on the curtains, her favorite cup still sitting by the kitchen window, untouched since the day she left. I was only 18, legally an adult but emotionally still a child. For weeks I barely ate or spoke. Friends tried to comfort me, but no one could fill the void my mother left behind. I remember sitting on the porch one rainy evening, numb and lost, when an unfamiliar car stopped outside our gate. A woman stepped out, neatly dressed, with soft eyes and a sympathetic smile. "Are you Sarah?" she asked gently. I nodded, confused. She smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "I'm Saba. Your mother and I were best friends in college. I just heard the news. I can't believe she's gone." The way she spoke about my mother, using her nickname, recalling old memories, made me feel a strange warmth. I invited her inside, and for the first time in months I found myself listening to stories about Mom that I had never heard before. She laughed, she cried, and she held my hand the way a mother would. From that day on, Mrs. Saba became a regular visitor. She brought me meals, helped me with bills, even accompanied me to the lawyer who was handling my mother's estate. "You shouldn't deal with all this alone," she said one afternoon. "Your mother would want someone to look after you." Those words hit my heart like sunlight after a storm. I was so desperate for warmth that I didn't question her kindness. When she said, "You're like a daughter to me," I believed her completely. A few weeks later she suggested I move in with her. "This big house must feel lonely," she said, glancing around my mother's home. "Come stay with me for a while. I have a spare room, you'll have family around." I hesitated at first, but she seemed so genuine. I packed my things and moved into her house. A beautiful two-story place filled with family photos, laughter, and warmth. For the first time since Mom's death, I felt safe again. Every morning she'd make breakfast and tell me stories about her life, her late husband, her travels, her dreams. She even bought me new clothes and introduced me to her friends as my daughter. Those words made my heart flutter. Maybe life was giving me a second chance. A new family. But soon little things began to change. She started asking about my mother's property, where it was, how much it was worth, and whether I had received the inheritance yet. "You're so young," she'd say with a smile. "You need someone mature to guide you through all these legal things." At first I didn't think much of it. She sounded caring, protective, like any mother would. But one evening I caught her going through some documents in my drawer. When I asked, she laughed nervously. "Oh, I was just checking to see if the lawyer gave you the right forms." It didn't feel right, but I pushed the doubt away. After all, she'd done so much for me. Why would she hurt me? That night as I lay in bed, I heard her on the phone whispering to someone. I couldn't catch every word, but one sentence made my blood run cold. "She trusts me completely, it's only a matter of time." I wanted to believe I'd misheard her. I wanted to believe she truly loved me like a daughter. But deep down something told me, a storm was coming. The days after that phone call felt strange. I couldn't sleep well. Every word she spoke sounded rehearsed, every smile seemed painted on. But each morning she'd bring me tea, talk softly, and treat me with motherly affection, and my doubts would fade, for a while. Still, that sentence, "She trusts me completely, it's only a matter of time," wouldn't leave my mind. I tried to convince myself it meant something harmless, maybe about helping me with paperwork or my college admission. But deep down I knew something wasn't right. A week later she brought it up again, my inheritance. "Sarah," she began one evening, stirring her tea slowly. "I was thinking about your mother's property. You know, managing an estate isn't easy, especially for someone your age. What if someone cheats you? What if you lose it all?" Her words carried concern, but her eyes, those calm, steady eyes, seemed to be studying me, testing how far she could go. I said nothing, and she took that as a sign of trust. "Look," she continued, sliding a folder toward me, "we could put the house under my care, temporarily of course. I'll handle the paperwork and make sure no one tricks you. Once you're ready, we'll transfer it back." I stared at the folder, confused and uneasy. It didn't feel right, but she'd done so much for me. She'd given me a home, food, and affection when I had no one. Would she really betray me? I hesitated, but her voice softened, almost pleading. "Your mother trusted me. I promised her I'd take care of you if anything ever happened." Tears filled my eyes. I didn't even remember Mom ever mentioning that, but I wanted so badly to believe it. So with trembling hands I signed. That night she cooked my favorite meal. "You've done the right thing," she said, smiling proudly. "You're my daughter, I'll always protect you." But protection turned into control faster than I could imagine. Within weeks her tone changed. She started setting strict rules: when I could go out, who I could meet, even what I could wear. She checked my phone, my messages, and began calling me ungrateful whenever I disagreed. If I asked about the property, she'd wave her hand dismissively. "Don't worry about adult things," she'd say sharply. "Just focus on being a good girl." Then came the day that shattered everything. One morning, I received a letter from the property registrar's office. My name wasn't listed as the owner anymore. It had been replaced by hers. I felt my knees weaken as I read the document again and again. It couldn't be true. I ran to her room holding the letter, tears burning my eyes. "What is this, Saba?" I shouted. "You said it was temporary." She didn't even flinch. She looked at me with cold, emotionless eyes, so different from the woman who once hugged me like a mother. "Sarah," she said calmly, "you're too young to handle something so big. I'm just making sure it's taken care of properly." "Taken care of?" I snapped. "You stole it from me." Her lips curled into a half-smile. "Watch your tone, young lady. You live under my roof now." That moment something inside me broke. The woman who had promised to love me like a daughter had stolen the last piece of my mother I had left. I packed my things that night, my hands shaking as I stuffed my clothes into a bag. She watched me from the doorway and said almost mockingly, "Go if you want. But remember, no one will believe your little story." I walked out of her house barefoot with nothing but a backpack and a heart full of rage. The rain poured down as I stepped onto the empty street, but I didn't care. She thought she'd taken everything from me. But what she didn't know was that she'd just given me a reason to fight back. The night I left her house, the rain didn't stop for hours, as if the sky itself was mourning with me. I had nowhere to go, no money and no home. Everything my mother had worked for was now under Saba's name. For the first few days I slept at a friend's apartment, too ashamed to explain the whole story. The betrayal hurt deeper than the loss itself. I didn't just lose my home, I'd lost the person I thought was my second mother. But pain has a way of sharpening you. Once my tears dried, anger took over. I promised myself that Saba would regret what she did. I started small, working at a cafe during the day and attending evening classes. Every rupee I earned went into savings. It wasn't much, but it gave me a sense of control again. I spent nights researching legal procedures, inheritance laws, and fraud cases. At first it felt impossible. Saba had all the documents, the property under her name, and a reputation that painted her as a kind, respectable woman. But what she didn't have was the truth. Months turned into years. I gathered every small piece of evidence I could find: copies of my mother's will, witnesses who remembered the transfer, and even old text messages where Saba mentioned taking care of everything. One evening, while cleaning out my old emails, I found a scanned copy of the original property paper, the one that still had my name on it. It was the spark I needed. From that day forward, I stopped seeing myself as a victim. I became a hunter. Through a mutual friend, I learned that Saba had started a small charity organization, using my mother's property as her office. She often appeared on local TV shows, talking about kindness, honesty, and helping orphans. The irony made me sick. I created a detailed report of everything she had done: the false signatures, the manipulation, the fraud, and submitted it to the authorities. But that wasn't enough. I wanted her mask to fall in front of everyone. So I told my story online. I uploaded a video titled, "The Woman Who Stole My Mother's House." Within days it went viral. People couldn't believe that the same angelic woman they admired was capable of such deceit. Her charity donors pulled back, her friends disappeared, and her perfect image crumbled like dust. For 2 years I had lived quietly in her shadow. But now it was her turn to live in mine. When the police finally came for her, I didn't feel joy, just closure. Because revenge, I learned, isn't about hatred. It's about reclaiming the power someone tried to steal from you. And Saba? She taught me the most painful, valuable lesson of all: never mistake manipulation for love. The day of the court hearing, I stood outside the courthouse, hands trembling, not from fear but from the weight of everything I had carried for years. All the sleepless nights, all the humiliation, all the tears. It had led to this moment. Inside, Saba sat confidently beside her lawyer, wearing that same polite smile she always used to hide her lies. She glanced at me across the room, the same girl she once called daughter. But this time I didn't look away. The hearing began. My lawyer presented every piece of evidence. The falsified signatures, the manipulated transfer papers, and the witness testimonies. The judge listened carefully as I told my story, my voice steady but filled with emotion. When I finished, the room fell silent. For the first time, Saba's face changed. Her calm expression cracked, revealing the panic underneath. Her lawyer tried to argue that it was a misunderstanding, that I had voluntarily transferred the property. But the documents proved otherwise. My mother's will clearly stated that the house belonged solely to me. No conditions, no guardianship. After hours that felt like years, the verdict was announced. The property was to be returned to my name immediately. Saba was found guilty of fraud and document manipulation. She stood there, shaking her head in disbelief, tears of frustration streaming down her face. "Sarah," she said desperately as the officers approached, "I treated you like my own child." I looked straight into her eyes and whispered, "A real mother protects. You destroyed." Those were the last words I ever said to her. Outside the courtroom, the sunlight felt different. Brighter, softer, like my mother was finally smiling down at me. The house that had been stolen from me was no longer just a building. It was a symbol of everything I had survived. When I walked through its doors again, I expected to feel anger, maybe bitterness. But instead I felt peace. Because revenge wasn't about watching her fall. It was about standing tall again on my own. Over the next few months, I restored the house piece by piece. I repainted the walls, reopened the windows, and placed my mother's photo back on the living room shelf. Every brushstroke felt like healing. Sometimes, neighbors would mention Saba's downfall, how she lost her wealth, her reputation, and her so-called friends. But I never felt satisfaction in that. Her greed had already punished her long before the court did. I learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means freeing yourself from the chains of pain someone else forged. Now every evening I sit by the window where my mother once sat and whisper softly into the fading light. "Your daughter is safe now." And somewhere deep inside I know, that's the justice my mother would have wanted.